name is Brian Bloom, and I'm the founder of a company called Burton, which is celebrating its 10th year. We are the leading investment firm for healthcare in Canada. And I made the mistake about 5 years ago when I first came to the Congress here, when I was asked to speak on a topic, and I actually spoke on the topic. And I then realized that everyone else does a commercial for what their companies are all about. And I'm not going to miss that opportunity. So I'm going to tell you all about Burton, and then I'm going to talk about what I've been asked to talk about, which is what is going on with the investment climate for pharmaceuticals and healthcare in Canada. And of course, we can't help but talk about cannabis. We don't do too much cannabis at Burton. I don't mean we don't smoke it. Some people may, but we don't invest in it, or we are not bankers to cannabis companies. We have, but it's not the focus of what we do. Anyways, so let's go. All right, so we have a variety of services that help healthcare companies grow in Canada and help investors make returns. So we are the leading raiser of capital for healthcare companies in Canada as an investment bank, which means we raise 1 million, 10 million, 100 million, billions of dollars for pharma, biotech, medical device, and healthcare IT and services companies in Canada. We speak to all the global investors in Boston, New York, San Francisco, and we haul that money home for private and public companies. And we're very good at that, number one. We're also by far the leading merger and acquisition advisor for healthcare companies in Canada. We do a lot in the pharmaceutical space. We help little companies sell to big companies. We do partnerships, asset sales, and I've worked with many of you in the audience today. Equity research, we put buy and sell recommendations on stocks, also ranked number one at that, and we do sales and trading. So all of those are investment banking things. Goldman Sachs, RBC, they do similar things, but we do that in quite a dominant way for healthcare in Canada. We have other services like our consulting practice, monetization planning. We do direct investing too, so we directly invest in companies. We also form and incubate our own companies, so we're very busy people. All right, these are some recent transactions where we've been the underwriters or the agents or advisors for various pharmaceutical companies. Again, many of you in the audience today in the pharma or the generic sector. Good. We have a detailed methodology that underpins all of our services, and that includes doing a very deep amount of diligence. I like to say we have more PhDs at our firm than MBAs, which is true by quite a logarithm. We're experts across all funding structures, so we work equity and debt and private and public companies, all sorts of situations. And number three, we're very good at doing international deals. We work with investors and acquirers and companies all over the world to benefit Canadian companies. Number four, my job at the firm is actually to have good relationships with healthcare specialized investors all over the world. And those are generally the investors who fund our companies. We also do a lot to engage the healthcare community. That sounds like a dorky statement, but it's true. We do a lot of mentorship. We sit on boards. We contribute to government policy. We also run awesome events like the Burton Healthcare Investor Conference, which many of you should be attending. It is, we attract more than 1,000 people every year, investors from all over the world, to see the best of Canadian companies as they present. And 2 weeks ago, we had the Burton Award Gala, which was just a good excuse for me to buy a new tuxedo every year. As we honor, it's sort of the Oscars for the innovative healthcare industry. It was a fun time. Okay, so now I've been asked to talk about the investment outlook for 2019, and I'd be pleased to do so. So I put up this slide last year. I truly believe, especially in the biotechnology and R&D side, there's never been a better time to be investing in healthcare. This is mainly a biotech-focused slide or a R&D-focused slide, but on the top left, the tools like sequence that we have to understand and decipher disease have never been stronger and more accurate. The bottom left, never before have we had the clinical tools and protocols and diagnostics to properly test what it is our hypotheses are about disease and products to treat them. It has led to huge breakthroughs and curative breakthroughs in diseases that were formerly intractable, and we have never had a more friendly capital markets on NASDAQ, and capital available, and a more friendly FDA under the leadership of Scott Gottlieb, who spoke at my conference 2 years ago. I also put this slide up last year. The funny thing about the capital markets in Canada is that its acceptable risk is saying you're a mining company and you're digging, stuff out of the ground. But unacceptable risk to Canadian investors is actually doing R&D. Both are exploration, both are high-risk enterprises, but pumping oil and gas or gold out of the ground is cool and okay risk, and trying to cure cancer is not. So generally, Canadian investors don't like to invest in healthcare. They don't have the expertise for it. There are very few healthcare specialized investors in Canada, and it always ends poorly. And we have a long history of that. Not that mining and oil and gas don't end poorly too. I won't even talk about cannabis, okay, in this respect. So the title of this slide, Canadian investors have been really stupid. And that is incredibly true. So during the dot-com bubble, everyone rushed into internet stuff and genomics and stuff. And then all of a sudden they said, whoa, this isn't as... It's more complicated, it's not as profitable as we thought it would be. We thought it'd be easy money. And then investors, of course, in like 2013 and 14, remember when Valiant went from like $10 a share to $300 per share? The Canadian investors were like, oh, these specialty pharmas, they just buy stuff and increase prices. This is awesome. So cheap debt and U.S. tax inversions were all the rage, and a lot of people made and lost a ton of money on Concordia and Valiant, and thanks to Martin Shkreli and all that stuff. So, and recently it's been all about Bitcoin and blockchain and AI. And of course, cannabis. So cannabis is the rage. All of my banks that my friends work at, like Canaccord and GMP, they are making bigger bonuses than they ever have, and all they're doing is raising money for cannabis companies, which is fine. Anyways, but that is the thing of the moment. And are Canadian investors being stupid by investing in cannabis? I think largely yes and no. So a lot of people are making money fast and they're investing in stupid companies, and valuations are ahead of themselves. But there are world-leading companies like Canopy that have appropriate valuations because they're leaders in what is a huge market and a growing market. I guess the question for us today, given that this room is a pharmaceutical industry room, is cannabis medicine? Again, I would say yes and no. It is certainly healthcare. Let's go to the left side of the screen for a second. So GW is one of the only companies in the world that have actually, in a GMP and FDA regulated way, run clinical trials and have an ethical prescription pharmaceutical company, a product on the market for epilepsy, on the market in the United States. And I think Sanofi had Marinol. I mean, there have been a few cannabis or cannabinoid products that are actually FDA approved. When the stupid Canadian investors come to me and say, oh my God, cannabis, it's revolutionizing healthcare. The pharmaceutical company must be like, the companies must be so excited about this revolution. I always say, with gene therapy and gene editing and things like that, if you were to rank how cool and awesome innovations are in the pharmaceutical industry, cannabis is maybe 73rd. Like, it's not that innovative. No offense, you were talking about slow-release technologies. That was innovative in the healthcare industry maybe 40 years ago. It is important for the consumer context that someone could take it once a day. But to this audience, I think it's, they wouldn't think it's innovative. So cannabis is a way for people to self-medicate, and it's a consumer product, the CBDs and the THCs. So it's akin to vitamins, everything on the, OTC, and another way that people self-medicate is through booze and wine and beer. So it's not surprising that the consumer arms of pharmaceutical companies are starting to partner with the cannabis companies, which makes sense. And it isn't surprising that the the booze companies and the cigarette companies and the alcohol companies, as consumer companies, are also starting to partner with the cannabis industry. So is cannabis medicine? Sometimes. Is medical cannabis medicine? It's mainly health and wellness and people who are self-medicating and figuring out what healthcare products in the consumer market work for them to sleep or for their anxiety, and it's important. But it's not as big as as Canadian investors think from a medical context. I thought this was actually funny. I looked at the S&P TSX Toronto Stock Exchange Healthcare Index. It had 3 cannabis companies. It had 3 old age homes, and only 2, and I put Shady Pines Maw. I don't know if anyone gets that. I was a big Golden Girls fan growing up. And only 2 pharmaceutical companies in the entire healthcare index. So what does that say about the Canadian, the true Canadian healthcare industry? That real estate companies and cannabis companies are 75% of our index. Pretty sad. All right, so just to show you too what's going on, I'm going over. Is that okay? But I'm entertaining. It's okay. It's fine. All right, good. So these are all the investment banking firms that used to do things in healthcare. Of course, Bloom Burton is dominant, which is why I put our logo right in the middle, and it's so big. But the truth is, we have 25 people at our firm, and every other firm usually has 1 or 2 employees that do healthcare. So we're 10 times larger than everyone else. But let's see what cannabis has done to these folks. I'll give you a funny story. So Canaccord's stock analyst, who used to cover like Valiant and Promedic and Oncolytics or whatever, he has now moved to a private equity firm that just does cannabis. CIBC's analyst quit and moved to a cannabis diagnostic company. Scotia analyst, their pharma analyst, quit and moved to a small boutique bank where he only does cannabis. And GMP and Echelon, our friends there, yes, they still have analysts that do stock analysts that do pharma, but they also co-cover the cannabis stuff. So cannabis is taking over. It's interesting. I put this slide up last year too. So just so you know what sentiment is going on in the healthcare industry. So Canadian investors, if we were to ignore cannabis for a second, so healthcare services is kind of a hot topic right now. A lot of people, and healthcare IT, a lot of people are investing not in biotech and R&D because Canadian investors, as I mentioned, don't really understand that because they've been burned before, and that's fine. There's lots of money in Boston, New York. Anyways, Canadian investors are kind of all gaga for private delivery of healthcare, app and digital health. Those are kind of at the top. And specialty pharma, thanks to Concordia and all these stocks that went up and went down, is really near the bottom of the list. And global investors, on the other hand, if you were to go down to Europe or into the United States, biotech for sure is, top of the list. We have, remember that slide about the golden age of medicine and the golden age of R&D? The biotech industry is just kicking ass right now. They are making so many advances so quickly in so many diseases that biotech globally is really the place to be investing. And pharma, or specialty pharma, or big pharma, is more at the bottom of the list globally as it is in Canada. But of course in Canada we can't ignore that Canadian investors prefer cannabis over anything. All right, I think that's it. Thank you.